Ever since Effect Veiler came out in Duel Links, there was always this discussion if hand traps would ruin Duel Links as a game. It came out in, like, what, 1.5 years ago, which is already quite some time, actually. And, well, as a backrow-centric meta, before they added the modern hand traps like Veiler or Morna, it is quite a shift from a different playstyle, just overall. In the 8-9 years of Duel Links lifespan, most of it has all been full backrow. People were setting free backrow back in, the infamous Control Shiranui era, where people were just playing a very small engine and then playing set free pass, and that was like the thing that people hated the most. But it was also like the most effective way to be playing the game, because that would be very useful to have just free set back row to counter what your opponent has, and it will be very effective because the game power level wasn't that high back then. But with more and more hand traps being added to the game, and if you have a look at the most popular cards, Effect Veiler is the most popular card in ranked, and Forbidden Droplet is very strong, but it's still only second. It raises the question of, if hand traps are even a good thing to have in Duel Links. Is it like actively ruining the game, like people have been saying when Effect Veiler came out? Or should they even add more hand traps like, Ash Blossom or Ghost Bell, Ghost Ogre? Well, let's have a look at why hand traps were even getting popular, other than, Effect Veiler being added to the game, because there are a few reasons other than that. First of all, is that skills have a design change ever since, I believe, Blackluster Soldier. The BLS skill, if we have a look real quick right now, it came out at, I think, September 2023, and it has a different kind of restriction than the skills before it. So, I think, what's the skill called? Super Soldier, is it that? But no, it's not that. There it is, Soul of Luck and Darkness. It has a different restriction from the skills that were made before it, in that it doesn't restrict you from playing cards, it restricts you from special summoning or normal summoning stuff, which the later skills will have that restriction as well. So I think this skill is the first one that doesn't have the deck building restriction and instead has the summoning restriction. So you're allowed to play hand traps. Old skills, like, Odd Eyes, Destiny Hero, Melodious, whatever. All of those skills have a restriction that you can only play the archetype monsters, and you can't play any other monsters that are not in the archetype, and you have to play like a set amount of them. But this skill does not have that. This skill only stops you from special summoning monsters other than Gaia, BLS, or monsters without a rank or level. And ever since then, a lot of skills have followed the same kind of format that this skill has. And what that means is that you're allowed to play hand traps, and because Duel Links is such a skill-reliant format, skills do a whole lot to make a deck good. It makes sense that if a skill doesn't allow you to play hand traps, you just won't play it. You just, you would still play the skill, but just not play the hand traps, and instead just find other stuff that you could play. But now that skills are allowing you to play hand traps, it makes sense that hand traps are getting more popular. But other than that specific kind of design change, I think the game in general is just shifting away from a back row heavy meta in general. As I said, Control Shiranui, infamous, set free pass, back row heavy deck. We also have like the trap Goki versions that people were playing when Goki first came out. The Goki stun deck where you play like a very few amount of Gokis and then a ton of traps. Those decks exist back in the day. But now we have another design change actually that kind of forces the game away from that type of meta, like backrow meta, which is skills. Now, other than, you know, having the normal special summoning restriction that has been the case ever since the BLS skill, I think. And we also have the design change of skills having a second effect that can be used only if your opponent controls a monster. And well, what that does is it gives a lot of decks a lot more power when you actually go second without you actually needing to rely on drawing the staples. Because, well, Yu-Gi-Oh! In general has a very big going first problem, which is if you go first, you have such a massive advantage that it just doesn't make sense to not go first. If your deck isn't, you know, one of those blind second decks that only work going second. But Duel Links has a unique solution in that the skills have bonus effects when going second, and those are very strong, and those help you kind of mitigate the disadvantage of just going second in general. And also you get a free draw, and which is, you know, not bad, but the skills do a whole lot of heavy lifting to actually make going second a lot easier. And because of how skills work nowadays, and they, you know, do a lot more when they go, you know, the Fleur skill giving you a free guy, the Salamangreat skill giving you a free guy, Borlink giving you a free guy, Predaplan even though not, you know, explicitly having a going second cost. I mean, it does give you a counter, but the, you know, the big thing is that it's such as the kaiju guy. I forgot what the name is. You know, all of these skills have like a bonus effect that helps you go second, which means having free set back row is just a lot less effective than it has been in the past, because the skills just help you play through them. You know, if you have like a monster with like a quick effect and set free pass, if you play against like resonators, they just get to set a fiendish chain, and that trades for one interruption just out of the gate. And you know, the back row needs to be very, very good in order to actually matter, because of how much these skills do. And that brings us to the second point, in that the traps are just not good enough. You know, we have, let's have a look at, like, you know, the traps. We were kind of moving away from, you know, the limit-free trap meta, because, like, I think, like, 2 years ago, Konami was releasing a lot of limit-free traps, 2-3 years ago, I think. You know, when Links just came out, we have like Compulse, Crackdown, and IDP, Terrors of the Overworld, which is no longer at limit free, Lost Wind. You know, they were pumping out tons and tons of limit free traps. Dogmatica Punishment is like the most recent one, but it got removed from the limit list anyway. So yeah, they were like pumping out all of these limit free traps, which are like meant to be better than the other traps that are kind of meta in the game, and Konami put them all to limit free to kind of prevent us from just lumping all of those powerful traps in a single deck. Well, these traps are powerful, yes, but if you look at like the TCG or even like Master Duel, you can see that traps have to do a whole lot to even like see any amount of play, even in like trap specific decks like Labyrinth, right? We have cards like Daruma Karma Cannon, which is a staple in Labyrinth. We have Solemn Judgment, Solemn Strike. Those cards are mainly seeing play in the side deck. Even like pretty much auto-win cards like Dimensional Barrier. Those cards are only played in the side deck. And those traps only see play because they pretty much win you the game on the spot when you activate them. And even though, you know, Duel Links is far from the power level of like the TCG, and you know, we really don't need traps that do just win you the game on the spot. These traps are just, you know, it's not good enough. Not good enough. You know, IDP can be game winning against like certain decks, but not every deck. But like, because of how like the decks in the modern era just do so much going second, they can push through it pretty easily. We have stuff that force it out, you know, the Fleur deck has the guy, the level 8 that pops cards on the field. We have like generic ways to force out back row, like Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Unicorn. Yeah, so like decks in general just have a general ability to play through back row a lot more than in the past. So these limit free traps, although they are still strong, but they are just a lot less good than they were in the past. So we also have the problem of like these traps are traps, so they suck going second. You know, look at the best deck right now. Even though the most popular deck technically is Heroes, I believe it is no controversial opinion that Resonators is a very, very good deck, arguably tier 1, best deck in the game. This deck is insane going first. Let's have a look at like the end board pieces. If we have like, yeah, Void Ogre Dragon negates a spell trap. Well, if you have a trap, tough luck. Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss negates anything, including spell traps. So again, negates back row. We have like what? Crimson, a Soul Resonator that protects from destruction. So if your back row pops, tough luck. We have like Chewing Gum that you can send to the graveyard with Bone Archfiend, and that negates a taunting effect. Yeah, so like in general, decks just so good at going first and second now that just kind of slowly power creeps the amount of power that these back row have. And like, even if these back row don't win you the game going first, and sucks a whole lot going second, it just doesn't make sense to play a lot of them, right? If they got good going first and okay going second, you know, like in the past, you can, you know, even if you go second, you can just set free and then use them during your opponent's next turn, and that would still sometimes win you the game. That's still like up and above 50% win rate, and that's still good enough. But nowadays, I don't think they're like justified to play any of these traps because they just don't do enough. They don't win you the game going first, and they really suck going second. So yeah, and we also have historically decks like, you know, Agents, or Time Thief, or Shadows. These decks are so good at going first that you just don't want to play any of these traps, because if they go first, you just get cooked anyway. And you much rather have like equalizers, or like at least hybrids like Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse. These cards that Forbidden Droplet, these cards that can be used going first or second, and can equalize a bullet state, and other than these like limit free traps that have stronger effects, but are just a lot worse going second because they are traps. And even these like equalizer quick play spells like Forbidden Droplet or Book of Moon aren't very effective because of decks that have searchable back row, you know, like Resonators, or Agents that just negates all spells, or you know, Time Thief has the counter trap. You know, these decks don't really die immediately to these sort of quick play spells anyway, and they just have like less strong effects in general than like the limit free traps. So yeah. We also have to mention like some of the decks in the game are just like FTKs. You know, the 10 dangle FTK that people were talking about. This deck just FTKs you. If you have like any back row, tough luck. You're just dead on the spawn. You better draw Veiler or DD Crow, otherwise you just lose. Even though I don't think the deck is like very good because it kind of just sucks going second, even though, you know, it does play a bit going second, but it generally isn't very good. But, you know, back row just doesn't do anything against those decks at all. Another thing I want to mention is that decks in the metagame in general are just like more vulnerable to hand traps in general. When we look back in like the Blue Eyes era, you know, like Battle Chronicle, we have like just normal summon Blue Eyes White Dragon, and the skill sets you a back row. And back then, back row is like a better kind of in a better situation, in a better position than it is right now. So having a Blue Eyes plus like free set back row is quite good. And that deck doesn't really care about hand traps at all, because you just normal summoning a vanilla, and if you have a Veiler, well, what are you gonna Veiler? Dragon of White that can tag out anyway, you know? So, decks like those don't really care about hand traps, so hand traps are less good in that era. But if you have a look at decks right now, you have decks like Resonators, or Red Dragon Archfiend, which I like to call them. I don't know why Duel Links meta calls it Resonators. This deck came out like 2 years ago in the TCG. It's like a really modern deck. I have this deck like IRL because it's like from a structure deck that has been released recently. It's like a modernly designed deck made with like hand traps like Ash Blossom in mind, and it like does all the things that modern decks do. And well, it is obviously very good in Duel Links in a meta where like the power level is just not that good in, like, not that high compared to the TCG in general. But well, the decks just like are modern decks, and they have modern weaknesses like losing to hand traps. And well, that just means that because they are made with like hand traps in mind, you will need to use hand traps to beat them, like at least effectively. You can like use other ways that skills provide you. Maybe you can like search a kaiju or search a super poly, and you know, those might help. But like, those decks are designed like Salads, for example. Salads are, you know, not as recent as Resonators, but they are pretty recent as well in the grand scheme of things. And well, these decks have like modern weaknesses like being hand trapped, you know. So yeah, so there are also decks like Agents back in the day, where it just like dies to some hand traps, like Lancia, for example. So Master Hyperion, it needs to banish from the graveyard to summon itself, or like Majesty Hyperion also needs to banish from the graveyard to summon itself. I don't know where it is. Okay, I'll find it from here. Yeah, Majesty Hyperion needs to banish from the graveyard to summon itself. If you get Lancia'd, you just can't play the game. So, like, there are just some hand traps that just like cook certain decks. So like, it is understandable that like in like those situations, for example, like Duel Link being able to search it, that you would want to play a hand trap, even if, you know, you don't play it in multiple copies. It just works against certain decks, so it like makes sense to play those kind of hand traps. You also have like decks like Lyrilisk, which is like a modern example that just like gets cooked by Droll or Nib, right? Let's see, Winged Beast. Yep. It's like the deck spams a lot of level 1 guys that cannot be targeted or destroyed. So Effect Veiler is less effective because the things that you want to negate are usually protected from targeting. Like the Recital Starling, you usually make it with the Brown Bird, which prevents it from being targeted, and all of the main deck guys activate from hand. So Veiler just doesn't really do anything. But what it does do to the deck is Droll, which stops him from searching, and Nib, which bypasses all of those protection and just like sacks the entire board. So like in these situations, hand traps are just objectively better than some of the other back row you could be playing. Even stuff like Forbidden Droplet. Because Droplet sometimes just, well, it's good against Lyrilisk in particular, but against other decks it might not do so much. Okay, so finally, I guess that brings us to the question, is it a good thing for Duel Links to have a hand trap meta? And is it good for like the game to shift away from a back row heavy meta in general? I think it's fine. I think it's fine. It's like, I'm not just saying that as like a Master Duel or a TCG player, but I think that having hand traps in general is a good thing for Yu-Gi-Oh to have. And that is also the case in Duel Links, even though we had a very long history of being a back row centric meta. Because I think it's just more fun in general. Because the thing about hand traps is that they're generally less strong than dedicated traps, with the advantage that you are able to use it during your opponent's turn. So like Effect Veiler, it's just one negate. It doesn't even destroy. It just negates a monster effect on the field. And, you know, if you were to play a negate in trap form, there are much more better options. The Lost Wind is a permanent negate, and also resets itself. You know, we have counter traps like a Divine Wrath that negates and destroys, and it's also a counter trap, so you can't respond to it. So you get my point. It's that the traps they have better effects than hand traps, but hand traps can be used from your hand, so you can use them even if you go second. And I think that's a good thing because a back row meta back in the day, I'll admit it's not very fun because what would happen is that if you go first, you set free back row, and you pass, and then your opponent plays, you activate your back row, they can't play, and then they either, you know, draw the out. Back when, you know, Hate Grenade wasn't banned yet, they could just Hate Grenade. After they were banned, it was kind of a bit more tough. They have to like draw MST, or maybe just hard play through it if their engine is strong enough. Otherwise, they just lose, and I don't think that's very fun. I think that's like a very boring gameplay because whoever goes first just has such a massive advantage in that if you go second, it's very hard to play through a lot of set back row. Book of Moon does change that a bit because that's like a milestone for the game to have like a good quick play spell that can be used to go in second to turn off monster interaction. But hand traps are just far better in what they do. So like even if you go second, you can like stop your opponent slightly. Sometimes it wins the game on its own. I don't think that's like very healthy in general, but that's beside the point. Stuff like Effective Veiler or Ghost Mourner usually just like slaps him on the wrist, and they could probably still end on something, but just end on stuff that is less good in general. And also, like, you know, even if it's steering away from a back row meta, people still play back row. So even if you get completely interrupted, you can still set your back row, and that's still pretty good, even if it's like a lot less strong than it is in the past. So even if your hand trap ends your turn, you still don't really end on 0 interruptions most of the time because you have back rows. And then if you go second, well, I mean, if you go first, these hand traps still work. It still like stops your opponent, but in a less oppressive way than set free traps are. So I think that's like promoting a healthy sort of back and forth from both players, which I think is good. And yeah, I think this also raises the question of, do I think more hand traps should be added to the game, like Ash Blossom, like I said in the intro? I think, well, they don't need to. I think like the amount of hand traps we have in the game are pretty good, because after all, we were playing in a 20 card format anyway, so we didn't need that many hand traps because just by playing like 3 Veilers and 3 Crows, that's like a big portion of your deck is already hand traps. So even if we add more hand traps, the ratio of hand traps probably won't change that much. So I don't think we need to add more hand traps, but you know, even if they add like Ash, for example, I think it's fine. It might be a controversial take, but I think it's fine. I think it's fine if they add like Ash, as long as it's like not Maxi, for example. Ash is fine. Even like Molcharmies are fine, because Molcharmies don't do anything going first, and the coin flip isn't decided by yourself. It's like you have to go first or second based on random chance. So I think cards like Molcharmies are even fine. And also, like, we're playing a 20 card deck, there's like a realistic chance that you deck yourself out. But you know, that's beside the point. I think hand traps like Ash Blossom are fine to be added to the game, because like, first of all, the skills in the game, you know how skills work, they bypass a lot of hand traps. For example, the Salamangreat skill summons a guy for free from your deck. You can't Ash this because it's from a skill. It's not an effect that you can Ash. It's not even an effect that you can chain anything to. So if you end up in Ash, well, I guess you're just holding your Ash for the next thing, which well, it will still negate stuff like Gazelle or the level 2 guy that you get for free, but skills just circumvent this a lot. For example, like the hero skill just adds a poly to your hand, adds a super poly to your hand, gets a guy like for free from your deck or graveyard. Ash doesn't do anything against that, right? So I think Duel Links is in a unique spot where hand traps are less effective because of the existence of skills, and also backrow decks are still kind of viable, more viable than it is in Master Duel or in the TCG. So those decks are just more resilient to hand traps in general. And also once in a while we just get decks like Blue Eyes that just doesn't care about hand traps at all. So in those situations, hand traps are fine. And also, if they decide to add more hand traps like Ash Blossom or Ghost Ogre, what they'll probably do is, first of all, they might limit it to 3 alongside like other hand traps like Veiler. Second of all, they probably will have a design change in the skills in the future to kind of accommodate towards a hand trap meta. So like you will have more skills with like searching effects, so that the decks don't just die to an Ash Blossom, for example, or die to a draw, because they can't really respond to skills with card effects. So with those like changes in mind, they'll probably be fine adding like specific hand traps that they could like design around. And even if like a hand trap is like specifically good against a certain deck, I don't think it's that big of a problem, because of how like decks built in Duel Links compared to how they were built in the TCG are fundamentally different. We're not playing like a 24 hand trap deck with like 10 1-card starters like how it is in the TCG. We have a lot more going second power just like from the existence of skills alone. So because of how they make skills to make bad decks good, the decks don't rely on card effects a lot more than how they were relying on in the TCG. So hand traps are just a lot less effective in general. So yeah, I think that's it. I've been rambling for quite a long time. It's like this video is like semi-scripted. I have like a few points that I plan to bring out, but I don't really have like a full script written. Tell me what you think. It's not really, I guess it is for the algorithm, but if I cared about the algorithm, I would have made a lot more videos, a lot more than once every 2 weeks. But yeah, I'm genuinely interested to see what you guys think about hand traps in general. Pick not related on screen, but yeah. I wanted to know if you want more hand traps to be introduced in the game, and if so, what hand traps you want to see being added. Do you want Ash Blossom, or like less good things like I don't know, Ghost Bell, Ghost Ogre? What bad hand traps are there? Like what? Retaliating Sea, I don't know. But I think that's in the game, isn't it? Anyway, yep, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you in like 2 weeks, maybe.